We are live, and I'm just gonna introduce you in a moment, and I'm gonna bring you, not me, Dexter is gonna bring you on the screen, and we're gonna have some fun, just letting people know about what you're doing, how you're doing it, and how you get to be where you are doing what you're doing. All right. So your episode is entitled "Deal to Heal and Fulfill" with Ernest James, and you're gonna tell folks exactly what that is all about, what it means and the power of it because it is your deepest conviction. So stand by. Let me just pull up your info and I'm going to introduce our guest. Ernest James is a family man, father, and friend with a heart for people. As a podcaster, mentor, and speaker, Ernest has dedicated his life to inspiring and uplifting others. His mission is to help others deal, heal, and fulfill. And he's going to tell you all about that in a moment. Deal with your problems. I love that. Heal from your pain. I love that even more. And fulfill your purpose. Yes, sirree. He spreads a message of hope and healing wherever he goes. He believes that we must heal ourselves. When we heal ourselves, we heal our families. And our families heal our communities. And our communities heal the world. That's wonderful. Ernest was raised in a two-parent household but recognized the effects of fatherlessness on his extended family and friends who've been raised by single mothers. He is determined to heal families by helping fatherless mothers and daughters heal from their father wound with his Friend to Fatherless Daughters campaign and mentoring dads and sons with his MAN in its UP Men activating newly untapped potential. I love that. Male mentoring program. Ernest also is an advocate for education. After a few failures early in life, he quickly rebounded to complete grammar school, finish high school in 3 years, and became a college graduate. There's so much more, folks, but I'm going to stop there for now and let's just introduce our guest, Ernest James. Welcome, sir.
Hey, hey, how you doing? I'm so glad to be here, man. Like I said, I didn't know we was live, so I do a podcast myself, and actually I do two podcasts, and I pre-record. So I was thinking we was pre-record. I turned it on, and you was already going. I'm like, oh, we on.
We are on and we have an audience and they may have comments and they may have questions. We're going to respond to those as we go along. So welcome, and we thank you for taking the time to be with us on Breaking Out of Depression. We have a co-host, Gabriella Woods, but she's experiencing some techies, so she's not able to join us now. So here's the thing, Ernest. Just in a few words, tell us who is Ernest James, and we're going to get into the deeper, softer, vulnerable spots in a moment. But who is Ernest James?
Well, I'm a podcaster, I'm a speaker, I'm an author, father, friend, all of those things. But I always say at my core, I'm just a person who loves people, right? I'm just a person who, deeply cares about people and want to make sure that people are okay. My grandmother used to say growing up, someone's today could be your tomorrow. And so always keeping that in mind. So the way that you help people today, the way that you treat people today, the way that you assist people today, you could be them tomorrow and someone else may be assisting you and helping you and having to come through for you. And so always keeping that in mind, and just spend my life really just trying to help people, the best that I can in different ways. So yeah, at my core, I'm just a person that loves people, man, and always trying to help in some way. Some things I lead on my own, and some things I follow. Some things I follow the leadership of others. You know what I mean? But just making sure that I'm just trying to get out there and be a help to the people.
Yeah, wonderful. That's truly amazing. But there was a time when you did not have that outlook or that perspective in your mind in life. You were going through some really tough stuff. If you had to recall one moment where it was like an epiphany for you and you realize, wow, is this really my life? What would that moment be? Could you share that moment of vulnerability with us so that we understand where you came from and how you got to be where you are now?
Oh yes, sir. Yes, sir. A couple years ago, I actually last year, I think it was last year, I did my first TEDx talk, and I kind of talked about overcoming suicidal ideations,
Yeah.
which I had, and so a couple years ago, I would say I was living a D life, right? I was in debt. I was a little bit depressed already because of that. Ended up going through a divorce. Then my mother-in-law, who I was very close to, died, and then my mom died.
Hmm.
Right, and so all of these things around the same time period, which sent me even more into a depression. And looking at these things and trying to figure out which way to go, which way do I turn, and realizing like, man, I can't fix any of these things that I'm dealing with. I can't change it. I can't bring my mom back. I can't bring my mother-in-law back. The academy had took a hit, so I couldn't, find work to bring money back to get out of debt. Like all of these things that I couldn't control. And so I was in a space where I was just like, man, you know what? I think everybody would be better off without me. And I started having those suicidal ideations and really thinking about, you know, taking myself out, taking, just to relieve the pain, to remove myself from all of these things where I was the common denominator. And what happened, I have one child. I have one biological child, which is my daughter. And my daughter probably was about 7 or 8 at this time, and we're at home, and we're playing in the front yard. And I got her little kiddie pool out, and the sprinklers, and she's playing in the water, and I'm sitting on the porch, and I'm just watching her. So she's running around the front yard, jumping in this little pool and all this stuff, and I'm just watching, and she's having fun and laughing and running, and then she stops, and she runs over to me on the porch, and she starts crying. And so I'm looking at her and I'm like, what's wrong? Because nothing happened. Like I'm watching you the whole time. Like nothing happened that you should be crying. And she looked up to me and she said, I miss my grandmothers.
Wow.
Because at this point, both of her grandmothers had passed away. And my daughter was a daddy's girl and still is. She's 22 now. But she was a daddy's girl then, and everywhere I went, I had her with me. Everybody be like, that's your shadow. Where's your shadow? Because she was always with me. And in that moment, I had to think, what would happen to my daughter, my only child, who has already lost both of her grandparents, or should I say, both of her grandmothers,
Hmm.
and now the next most important person to her, especially as being a daddy's girl, is me. What would happen to her if I wasn't here?
Yeah.
And it was that moment that I really had to like, okay, I gotta kind of get through this because I gotta make sure she's okay. Because all the things that I'm dealing with, I can't change. All the things that I'm hurting and that's causing me pain, I can't do anything about it to change my situation, but I can change her situation. I can make sure every day I'm showing up for her to make sure she's good and she's happy and she's not having these breakdowns, and that she doesn't start to get depressed and all of that. So that was the incident that kind of changed everything for me. And yeah, and so that was the thing, and I just really kind of started really making sure, let me show up for her. And as I began to show up for her, other people came and started showing up for me, family and loved ones, to kind of help me work through what I was working through. I started going to bereavement support, getting all of the tools that I needed to get better. But it started with that mindset to make sure that I could be here for my daughter, to make sure she was okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing, Ernest. I recognize three things there. First of all, I recognize that there was a divine moment when she suddenly stopped and came running to you and told you about those that she had missed, the elderly ones that she had missed. Secondly, you had to seek help from a community, people who were there for you in terms of the bereavement. And thirdly, your mindset changed to realize, hey, I've got to be there for someone else. And I
Hmm.
cannot allow the pain that I'm going through to define me. I've got to define me with now a purpose that is here for me, and I have to show up every day so that this purpose can have a future. Wow,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's an
You know,
amazing breakdown, my brother. Yes,
I
go ahead.
want I want to touch on that because the three things that you just mentioned when I did my TEDx talk, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that I when I talk about it, I said I learned to have fun with suicide ideations. And
Okay.
fun is an acronym,
Yes.
but it breaks down into the three things that you just pointed out, right? So it's focus, unite, and normalize. So
Wow.
my focus, I had to take the focus off myself
Mm-hmm.
because I was focusing on myself and I couldn't do anything about the things that I was going through. I couldn't bring my mother-in-law back. I couldn't bring my mom back. My marriage was going through a divorce. I couldn't save it. It was already at that point, so all of these things I couldn't change, and that was originally my focus. And because I couldn't change any of those things, I began to feel hopeless and helpless. But when I had the incident with my daughter, and I said, okay, I'm gonna put me to the side.
Yeah.
All those things I'm gonna stop focusing on. I'm gonna focus on this little girl and making sure I show up for her every day. So I changed my focus. So that was the F. The U stands for unite. And you
Mm-hmm.
also mentioned that unite with like-minded people, unite with people who's there for you. When I started taking bereavement, when I joined the bereavement sessions, I think my sessions was like eight. I think I had like eight sessions. I enjoyed it so much that I stayed there. I became a volunteer, and I volunteered for over a year, doing bereavement support, helping the other people that came in, and becoming that support system that I needed, but becoming that support system for someone else. And then even after that year, when I left, I started a nonprofit organization called Ann Christine Charities. My mother's name was Ann. Christine was my mother-in-law. And so
Okay.
I named it Ann Christine Charities, and that's exactly what I did. I started having bereavement support meetings in our community, you know, and so that was the unite, and then the end was normalized. Because one thing that I know, when you're going through situations, dramatic situations, wins, losses, all of those things will never be the way that it was. My life would never be normal as it was
Mm-hmm.
before my mom passed. My
Yeah.
life would never be normal as it was before my divorce. So
Mm-hmm.
all of these different things, my life would never be normal in the sense of where it was, but now I have to accept that this is my new normal. This is my new day. This is my life now. This is what my life looks like in this moment moving forward.
Yeah.
And so this becomes my new normal. So if I can accept that this is my new normal, still find the joy in it, still find the happiness in it, still find the purpose in my life of the way that it looks today,
Mm-hmm.
then I can accept my new normal. And so that's the way I explained it. The same things that you pointed out. Focus. So focus on yourself,
Mm-hmm.
or others if need be. I needed to focus on my daughter. Unite. Unite with like-minded people and a support system to help you get through. And then normalize. Accept that this is your life now, and look for the happiness in it because it's still happening. You still got breath in your body. You still wake up in the morning. That means you still got a purpose and you still got some happiness that you can find in your life, but you got to look for
Yeah. You just
it.
preach. That is a sermon. I get the idea that what you went through, Ernest, was indeed a process,
Mhm.
and you develop a mindset, and you took yourself out of the picture, and you placed your daughter as the center of focus. You focus on her. How do you get people, Ernest, to not see themselves as a victim of hurt, a victim of depression, a victim of loneliness, a victim of bereavement, but rather as an opportunity to focus on something other than what they are feeling so that they can get the kind of mindset that you got, take the steps that you took, and realign your life to a sense of fulfillment and purpose that now you can help others do the same.
Yeah, it starts with the mindset and the willingness to look for the good, to look for the things, right? So I learned a word not too long ago, or should I say law, and it's called the law of polarity,
Mm-hmm.
which says there is nothing that is all good, there is nothing that is all bad, but there's good and bad to everything,
Okay.
right? So there's a yin and yang to everything. So then you got the day and then you got the night. Anything that you have, there's two sides to it. There's two sides to a coin. There's two sides to a piece of paper. Whether you say front and back. So there's nothing all good or all bad in anything. So even though your situation that you may be going through may be bad on the front, if that's what you choose to focus on, but if you look, you can find the good in that same situation. And so even with the things that I was going through, the death of my mom, my divorce, all of those things could be considered negative. But if I look for the good in it, then I can find it. When I look at my mother passing away, and I looked at my mother-in-law passing away, those are bad things. Those are things that hurt me to my core.
Mm-hmm.
But what came out of that? I started a nonprofit organization named after them and became the support system that I needed for other people. If they had not passed, if that bad thing with both of them passing, if they had not passed, then I would have never went through what I went through, and I would have never built this thing that now begins to help other people.
Yeah.
So it's what you focus on. And so you have to decide, you know what? Yes, I am going through this situation. Yes, this situation is bad, but because I believe in the law of polarity, and it's a law, whether you believe in it or not, it's
Mm.
true.
Yeah.
Let me start looking for the positive. And once I find the positive, let me focus on that. Let me amplify that. Let me see how I can use that to help myself, to help someone else. And one of the things in life that we will learn, when you help other people, you help yourself. And a
Mm.
lot of times we get so consumed with ourselves. That's why we can't find our way out. That's why we get more and more depressed because it's like me, 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 me. Like, okay, let me sit me to the side for a second.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me see how I can be a blessing to someone else, even in the midst of what I'm going through, even in the midst of me being depressed, even in the midst of me going through sorrow, even in the midst of me feeling everything that I'm feeling. Let me see how, even with everything that I have going on in my life, how can I still be a blessing to someone else? And
Wow.
once we focus on that and start seeing how we can be a blessing to someone else, God always makes a way for us to be blessed. We are
Yes.
blessed to be a blessing. And the more we focus on how much of a blessing can I be to other people, God will continue to make be a blessing to you.
Absolutely, Ernest. 110%. I agree with that. Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. I want to switch gears a bit and look at the man side of things. Man up. And sometimes we need to be reminded, Ernest, that we need to be men. God put us here, as you rightly say, to be men, to
Yeah.
be the supporters, to be the protectors, to be the providers, and the ones that our children would want to emulate as we
Hmm.
mentor them and we grew them and nurture them in the admonition of the Lord in particular. There's just one question gnawing at me, and I need to ask, what does it mean to be a man in today's world? And what are some of the unhealthy lessons about masculinity that we need to unlearn?
One of the main things I would say that we have to really work on is our mental state in this time, right? And this it's not really new. It's something that we as men has been dealing with forever. Even in the name of my program, it's called Man Up. Um, Originally that statement is such a negative statement because it's something that we've been told since we was little, like don't cry, man up,
Yes.
wipe the tears, you know what I mean? So we were always almost conditioned not to deal with our emotions, not to be able to express ourselves, in a healthy way. And so now, years of being in that space, we're dealing with a lot of stuff now with mental health issues and things like that. Even with our kids, now they don't know how to express themselves,
Hmm.
because we haven't dealt with our emotions as men the way that we should. And so I think that's especially going through what I've been through with depression and things of that nature, dealing with the suicidal ideations. I'm a very vocal now. about everything that I've been through, especially with other men, because I want to open up. By me being vulnerable, it allows them to be vulnerable as well. By
Right.
me saying, look, this is what I dealt with. I was hurt when I went through my divorce. I was hurt when my mom died. I was hurt when I experienced these different things. And it's okay. I was dealing with suicidal ideations because I didn't feel like I had a way out.
Mm-hmm.
And so by me being vulnerable and being able to have these conversations with other men and young boys, it allowed us all to kind of open up. And so I took that man up, I took that phrase and I turned it into an acronym, which stands for men activating newly untapped potential. Because that untapped potential could be our emotional state. It could be the way that we express ourselves. It could be the way we show up in different spaces. Whatever that looks like, that untapped potential, those things that we pushed to the side that we didn't address as men, but that we pass down to our boys, those things we have to readjust. We have to readdress them now. And
Yeah.
so, coming up, one of the things that I realized and why I decided to work with men and boys, because originally I wanted to work with young boys. And I'm like, all right, what are the things that young boys need? But
Mm-hmm.
I kept running into men who was raised, without their dads and without a positive male role model, who even as grown men still needed those same lessons that I was teaching to the little boys.
Wow.
So I said, okay, now I got to expand it
Yeah.
because yes, these young men need it, but you got these older men who are adults now, but they didn't get those lessons when they were younger, so they need it now too. And so I started branding it out, expanding it out for young men, up to 25 and maybe 15 to 25 in that area to really start working with young men in that area, in those areas, men, or should I say males,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
that area, in that age realm. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that we really have to address now is being able to express ourselves verbally and being able to process and express ourselves emotionally so that we're not having these mental breakdowns and we're not responding to everything with anger or with aggression because we don't know how to say how we really feel or
Mhm.
because we're ashamed to acknowledge how we feel. We're
Yeah.
ashamed to acknowledge the fact that I'm hurting. I work in construction on my day job. I'm a bricklayer for 22 years, something like that. I've been doing it a long time. Um, but one of the things, as I was going through my, dealing with my suicide ideations and coming out on the side of it, and again, being very open about, the things that I've been through, I started looking in the construction industry is like within the top 10 of suicides.
Wow.
And so I'm like, okay. And then also taking into consideration that the construction industry is a male dominated industry.
Hmm.
There are women in it, but it's male dominated. So
Yeah.
that means we got a whole group of men in this whole industry that are committing suicide, and it only makes sense as a person that's in the industry because I know how we as men like to show up, and we like
Yes.
to show up like we're tough and we got it all together, and I'm a manly man, so I can't express to my coworkers that I'm hurting. I can't express that yeah I'm going through this divorce and it's affecting me some type of way. I
Yeah.
can't express that I'm dealing with not being able to see my kids every day and it's affecting me some type of way. I have to still put on this manly face in front of everyone else, in front of all these other men that I'm working with, and to the point where I can't take it no more. And then, someone ends up taking their life.
Mm.
So that's why I'm so adamant, even on the job, having these conversations, sharing my, experience, sharing the fact that I dealt with it, how I got past it, how I used the fun acronym to be able to work my way through it. All of those things I'm very vocal about, especially with other men, because we're in a space now where we have to be able to address, our emotional states, our mental states, our expression of
Hmm.
how we feel,
Yeah.
and I think once we begin to do that, once we get, in a rhythm and not be ashamed to say, this is what I'm dealing with, this is how I feel, this is what I'm struggling with, then it allows other people especially men, to say, okay, I'm struggling with that same thing,
Yeah.
and then work it out that way.
Wow. So that was a clinic that you took us through there, Ernest. We thank you so much. And I've got a comment that I must show you and read. Bernadine S. Wood says, "The mercies of God are new every morning. Nothing just happens that day with your daughter. It was the mercy of God for your turning point to shift your focus, to change your mindset, and to forget the negative stuff that you were going through. God is good. His timing is perfect."
Amen.
Can't
Amen.
argue with any stuff that is so right on, so on top of the cake, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Bernadine. Keep them coming, people. This is Breaking Out of Depression, and we are with Ernest James. I want you to look at the the theme that we use. It says deal, heal, and fulfill. Just give us a little synopsis on that, Ernest, and then we'll go into the thought of the week.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things that I realized as I was working, doing different things and just kind of go through it myself, and going through the work that I do, I found myself saying these little mantras, should I say, of you know deal with your problems. And it was kind of I was kind of working through it,
Yeah.
my thing, and then how I showed up to help other people.
Hmm.
It's like, all right, what's wrong? Okay, let's focus on it. Let's actually work through, whatever this issue is that we're dealing with, right? And so that's kind of where the deal with your problems came from. Like, all right, let's deal with it. And then once we've kind of dealt with it and worked through the problem, okay, now we got the problem fixed. Now let's heal from the damage that it did,
Yes.
whatever those things were. And once we're able to heal, okay, we got that bandaged up, we good. Now, why did we go through that? Because I believe that there's a purpose and there's a reason why we experience the things that we experience.
Yeah.
And so now that I've dealt with the problem, now that we've healed from it, what's the purpose behind it? Because I don't believe that we went through this thing for nothing. And so I kind of was going through that, and I just spoke it one day. One day it just came out. It was like, deal with your problems, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. And that just became my mission. And so everything that I started doing, I kind of built around that. And so that's my mission. My podcast is called Deal to Heal with E. James Podcast. I got an inspirational T-shirt line, which includes our shirt. I have it on now,
Yep.
with the deal with the pain, and that's
Yes.
called Deal to Heal Tees. My podcast network that I'm building is called Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. So I just kind of built everything around that because I think those are the major steps that we need to take in our lives in order to accomplish the thing that God has put in our charge. So deal with the problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill our purpose. And just to piggyback a little bit on the comment that just came through,
Hmm.
one of the things that as being a PK, so I'm a PK, and for those that don't know what that means, that's pastor's kid or preacher's kid, right? So I grew up generations of ministers and pastors, but growing up in church, one of the things that we've often said over and over again that we learned the scripture, it is like all things work for the good of those that love the Lord, right? And we're quick to uh, quote it, and we're quick to carry it as long as the things is good,
Yeah.
right? But the scripture said all things, and
Hmm.
so when I started looking back on my life now, on things that I went through now, and acknowledging the fact that all things work for my good. So in the midst of my mom passing away, in the midst of my mother-in-law passing away, there was some hurt and some heartbreak. But how did it work for my good?
Yeah.
Well, it worked for my good because I went through a process of healing. I went through a process of becoming, and then I was able to take my experience and build a nonprofit organization to be that for other people. So it
Yes.
was worked out for my good, and not just for my good, but now because I was blessed, I'm able to be a blessing to others.
Hmm.
And so we're able to find that in everything that goes on, everything that happens in our life. What was that thing that happened? And now, if I really do believe that all things work for me in my favor, then even though this thing is terrible, is bad, it was heartbreaking, some kind of way I know it's going to work out in my favor. So
Yeah.
now when I work through that and I get to that other side and I find that purpose in it, and I start to work in my purpose and walk in my purpose, then I realize and I can see, yeah, that was working in my favor as well. So I begin to really believe the scripture and not just believe it, but now I'm living it and I'm walking in it, and I'm an example of it. Like, yes, my mom passed. Yes, I went through a divorce. Yes, I was going through depression. Yes, all of these things was happening to me. But because those things happened to me, I'm able to be the man that I am today and now be a blessing to everyone that I come in contact with because I had those experiences and I made it through those experiences and now I'm able to help others make it through as well. So yeah, I can walk and live in that scripture and knowing that all things, well, no matter what it is, good or bad, all things are going to work for my benefit.
Yeah. Wonderful. What I would commend you for, and I hope that folks get the message, Ernest, is that you did not allow your hurt, your depression,
Mhm.
your suicidal ideologies to define you.
Yes.
You use them to help you define yourself in the midst of them. And
Mhm.
you saw the reality of God's purpose and intent working through all of them to bring you to this place now where you can be, as you said, a blessing to others. Deal with the problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose.
Yes,
Amazing.
sir.
Love it. We love it. So now we're going to give you a break. Take a deep breath, get some water. We're going to come again, but we're now going to have a thought of the week. Okay, so the thought of the week is a pretty simple one, but I hope it's one that would resonate with you guys. It says, we must appreciate with every fiber of our being the gift of life and invest in it every single day that we live. And that's worth repeating. We must appreciate with every fiber of our being the gift of life and invest in it every single day that we live. And that is why we must live in the present because it really is something that has been given to us for a purpose from God. And as long as we find that purpose and we can fulfill it, then we should never be satisfied with where we are. We should feel uncomfortable every day, knowing that there's always room for us to grow, to develop, to become so much more than who we are. Because with God, there are no limits to what we can accomplish in His name. And in the end, He gets the honor and the glory. So we go back to Ernest. I'm going to switch gears a little bit again, Ernest. And I want to look at the other aspect of what you do, and it's the Friend to Fatherless Daughters campaign. Tell us about that.
Yes. So I mentioned about going through divorce, right?
Yeah.
So I was going through my divorce a couple of years ago, and as I was going through my divorce, I started to focus on like, all right, what part did I play in this? And what are the common denominators? What are some of the things that I'm facing or we face in the midst of our marriage? And one of the things that came out to me and stood out to me was that every woman I've ever talked to throughout my whole life has been fatherless daughters. And I realized that and I said, dang, like, man, every woman I've ever talked to was a fatherless daughter. So I realized that for some reason, even either I'm attracted to them or they're attracted to me, but we keep connecting. And so being the person that I am, I'm like, all right, how can I help this demographic of women that I keep coming in contact with? And so I started a page on Instagram called Friend to Fatherless Daughters.
Hmm.
And so I would just go on Instagram and kind of share my experience and my advice as a dad, as a girl dad, as a friend, as a man who had always dated fatherless daughters, and once I realized that, I started doing more research into fatherless daughters and the effects of fatherlessness. Um, because one of the things that I realized was uh, that's not my experience, because I grew up in a two-parent household with my mom and my dad.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I also brought to that platform was the experience of watching my dad raised my five sisters,
Mm.
and so I kind of brought all of that together and started this page on Instagram called Friends to Fatherless Daughters. And again, just kind of going and giving my opinion, things that I learned, things that I felt would help, fatherless daughters, whatever age there was, grown adult daughters or young daughters, but really kind of finding giving my advice. And that's really how all of this started,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
When I mentioned about all things working for your good, that's how everything that I'm doing now started from that, because I started that page on Instagram, and a young lady called me and said, "Hey, would you like to be on my podcast?" I said, "Okay." I'd never done a podcast before or anything. I
Mm.
did that podcast episode with her. After that one, I got like seven more opportunities to be
Right.
on like seven different platforms. And so I did all of those. And one of the podcasts that I was on was called Dads on Purpose. And
Hmm.
I ended up meeting the host in person and us having a conversation. And in the midst of our conversation, he said, I think you should have your own podcast. And so I said, well, okay, I'll think about it. And, kind of thought about what I wanted it to be, what would I want to say, what would be the mission of it. And long story short, the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast was born,
Yeah.
and on that podcast, my guest and I talk about topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. So I talk about the depression. I talk about all the things that I've been through: depression, divorce, suicidal ideations. But for things that I haven't been through, I bring on other authors and coaches and speakers to address those issues as well, so
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
we're having a conversation, a well-rounded conversation. And fast forward now, I'm on like 200 and some episodes of that podcast since I started it.
Oh yeah.
But it started from the girl from the realizing my connection with the fatherless daughters, and I never lost my heart for that. And so I also end up starting a podcast called the Girl Dad Discussions Podcast, because I'm a girl dad. I mentioned about my daughter's my only biological child. She's 22 now.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but I started the Girl Dad Discussions Podcast in order to have discussions with other girl dads, and sometimes even daughters, talking about the daddy daughter relationship in order to combat the narrative of the absent father and the fatherless daughter. Because there are fathers, there are other girl dads like myself, and fathers that are very active in the lives of our daughters. And I wanted to voice those, I want to share those stories and voice those voices of those dads and even some of their daughters, to build that connection between the fatherless daughters and the absent fathers, and really show like, no, there are dads that are here that are really active in the lives of our daughters. And so again, that all of this started, from the realization of my connection with fatherless daughters. And I'm trying to get back. I kind of went away from that once I started, the Deal to Heal campaign with everything that I do. But I'm pushing back a little bit to reach back into, to that area, to start serving that demographic again, because that's where it all started, and I don't want to lose that. So even this year, I was able to do my first daddy daughter dance, for dads and daughters of all ages, because I wanted to have that, offer that space for dads and daughters to come together, and have that memory. Because it is a reality that some dads are, separated from their children, whether it be through divorce or whatever. So if I could build this opportunity for this moment, for this dad and this daughter to have these couple hours, to dress up and to eat together, and be in a room with other dads and daughters, and just, enjoy themselves and have that moment, then I've done, I've done the work that I started out to do. And so we was able to do our first daddy daughter dance this year, and I'm looking forward to doing one every year again to build those bonds with the dads and the daughters, and just offer that moment for them.
Yeah, hats off to you, sir. You are really capitalizing on the opportunities that God has given to you.
Mhm.
I'm sure that many lives are being touched in a positive and endearing and engaging manner. True inspiration can only come from the things that you're doing. Um, Gabriella says, "My deepest apologies to you, Andy, and our special guest, Ernest. You missed out the A there. No, no biggie. I have been trying everything for the past hour. I still have no luck. Oh my gosh, that's heartbreaking. But hey, Gabriella, here's the thing. Here's what you can do. You can send your comments, or if there's any questions that you want to ask Ernest, put them in the chat. I'm sure he'd be very willing to answer, because I know that you were kind of itching to be on this evening with us on this program. So we continue. And Ernest, we really thank you so much for the stuff that you're doing with all these parents, or well, mostly fathers, and helping also women to understand. But you said something that moved me, in that when you look back on your life and you thought about the divorce scenario, you started to look internally at you.
Mhm.
What did I did not do, or what did I need to do that I did not do? You started looking at yourself. Instead of pointing the finger at the other person, you were looking at the man in the mirror. And I need to commend you for that, because so many people go into that scenario and it's all about you.
Mhm.
But they never said to themselves, well, maybe some things I said or did brought us to this point, or this disposition that we are
Yeah.
in now. So, and it takes a lot of strength, mentally and emotionally, to do that, because it's two that makes that one, and it's two that can make it not one.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
just how it works. That's
Yeah,
just how
and you know what, you got to want the truth,
Yeah.
right? You got to want the truth, and you got to want to accept the truth. So, I mentioned about my divorce, but I've been married and divorced twice, and
Mm,
so that was actually coming out my second divorce.
mm,
That I was like, you know what, I've been divorced twice, and that's not my desire, and that wasn't my example, because
mm-hmm.
I was raised in a two-parent household. My mom and dad was married my whole life until my mom passed away.
Right.
And so that's always what I wanted. I wanted what I saw my parents have. And so now when I find myself dealing with my second divorce, I'm like, okay, I got to be doing something wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like, these two different women. I won't necessarily say two different personalities, because we all have a type. You know what I'm saying? So I
Yeah.
do attract the same kind of woman. You know, but I realize that these are two separate people, and I'm the common denominator in both of these marriages. So yes, I will acknowledge that she had a part to play in it. What things that she may have done, whatever. But I have to acknowledge what I did, because I'm the only one that was in both of these marriages. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
so if both of these marriages ended, let me look at what I did wrong. What can I do? And even in the things that I want to point out, and when this was a true thing that I had to do, even in the things that I want to point out that she may have done wrong, what did I or didn't I contribute to make her have the reactions or the actions that she had? And
Mm-hmm.
so again, really, you got to want that though, because that takes a hard truth when looking at mirror and say, you know what, I had a part to play in all of this. There are some things that was cool. There are some things that I didn't deserve or whatever. But there are some things that I had a part to play, because of the things that I did, because of the things that I said, because of the way that I acted, or on the other side, because of the things I didn't do,
Mm-hmm.
because of the things I didn't say.
Yeah.
One of the things, and I just share this briefly, my second marriage, me and my ex-wife, we're still really great friends, right? And we talk all the time, and we were able to uh, maintain our friendship even though our marriage broke down. And
Hmm.
so after the marriage, we've had, several questions about, why things didn't work out. What were some of the things that was missing? And one of the things that she mentioned to me was um, not for me, not really focusing on her desires. Because as you see, I got a lot of stuff going on,
Hmm.
and then at that time, I was a executive pastor of a church that I helped start, and we had been running for 10 years, so I had a whole lot of stuff going on. And she was supporting me through all of that, through all of the things that I was doing, supporting me with the church, very active in the church and all of that. And one of the things that she said to me was, I never took the time to ask her what was her goals, what
Wow.
was her vision,
Yeah.
what was the things that she wanted to accomplish, and support her the same way that she was supporting me. And so I had to eat that because I'm like, you know what? You're exactly right. I didn't do that. I was so focused on what I wanted to do and what I was trying to change in the world. And gratefully and thankfully, as my wife, you were there to support me. But I didn't ask you what you wanted. I
Mm.
didn't ask you if you were even happy in supporting me in the things that I was doing. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
so those are the things that I had to look at myself. And so when again, when you start looking in that mirror, sometimes it's hard and you don't like what's looking back at you.
True.
But if you want the truth and you want to be a better person, you want to show up better, you want to be a better version of yourself, then you have to accept that truth and realize, okay, there's some things that I got to work on. Yes, I may have been a victim of some things, but there's some other things that I was the one that was inflicting the pain, and I was the one that was being negligent, and I was the one that didn't show up the way that I needed to show up for this other person, and not being just so consumed in what I want and my desires. But let me make sure my wife is happy. Let me make sure that while I'm out here trying to save the world, that I'm not forgetting about my family, that
Mm.
I'm not, saving all of these other fatherless daughters, and the fatherless daughter that live in a house with me is not getting the attention that she needs. And those are some hard truths that I had to face. But again, when you want the truth and you want to be better, you got to look at that man in the mirror and say, what did I do wrong, and
Yeah.
what didn't I get right?
Yeah. Wow. You just made it so very, very, very simple in terms of yes, the reality, yes, looking at the man in the mirror, but you also broke down the entire process there, Ernest, in the sense that you have to really do a deep search and not be afraid of what the truth presents to you because it may not always be. As a matter of fact, the truth could be very ugly from your perspective,
Mhm.
and you could realize how very selfish you are. And the reason why I love this engaging program we are currently doing is because we are looking at things from a holistic perspective. The fatherless situation, how mothers deal with their daughters, how fathers deal with their daughters, how husbands supposed to deal with their lives and their wives and their families. Absolutely amazing, wonderful stuff. So, Gabriella, I think she has a question there. Let me see what. Okay, for fathers who want to reconnect with their children after absence, where
Mhm.
should they begin? I love that.
Well, first they have to reconnect, just get in contact with the daughter, right? Um, and that may be difficult because they may have been away from some time and all of those things. So once I want to believe that once you've made that initial reconnection, now you guys are trying to build or rebuild a relationship that has been vacant for a while. One of the first things I want to say is, as a dad that's been absent, when you come back into the picture, you have to accept them where they are. A lot of times, dads that's coming back in, they only remember where they left off at. So when the dad may have left, the daughter might have been 2. Well, now she's 20. You know what I mean? So you can't come into the picture dealing with her as if she's still 2,
Hmm.
even though that was the last time that you interacted with her. So you have to be able to acknowledge where she is now. I've had conversations with dads that have came back. after being away for a while, and then some of the things that their daughter may have may be doing, or the lifestyle that she lived, they don't agree with, and they're like, well, she doing this or she doing that, and this and that. I'm like, well, you weren't there to stop her. You
Hmm.
know what I'm saying? You weren't there to teach her. And so this is the version of her that she's developed in your absence. So
Right.
now that you're here, you can't come in trying to hold her to some values that you didn't instill in her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have to accept her where she is and begin to build that relationship with who she is and get to know one another in the space, because you're not the same either. You're not the version of who she remember you to be either. So you both have to come into the space, first of all, accepting who you are, both of you in that moment. So that I would say that would be the first thing. The second thing that I say that they should do is not start off trying to tell your side of the story, right? And so for many, you know, uh, dads and daughters who've been separated, a lot of the time it could be to divorce, um, a misunderstanding with the mom, or whatever happened, whether the mom was trying to keep the kids away from the dad, or sometimes truthfully the dad just walked away on his own. Whatever the reason was, don't come back into this space trying to tell your side of the story, right? Because it doesn't matter. And when they're ready, they're asked, right? When they're ready to know your side of the story, they'll say, okay, why wasn't you there? But the most important thing is you're here now. So let's start working on now. Let's start making sure that everything that we do now is in the best interest of this relationship between you and your daughter. And on the backside of that, the third thing, and I'll end it with this one. The third thing I would say, if just if, because I hope that this is not the case, but the reality is it is the case a lot of times. In your absence, the mom may have had a lot of things to say about you, and you couldn't defend yourself. So you don't know the narrative that your child has been fed in your absence, right? Neither can you control that narrative because it's already out there. But what you can control is how you show up in the present. So, with all the negative stuff or whatever that your child may have heard over the last 10 years or however long you've been absent, the way that you show up now and the way that you um, show up in their life now and be a parent now and show them love now, all of those things based on your actions now can erase all of those other things that you can, those narratives that you don't know about, or those narratives that may have painted you in a negative way. By the way that you show up now positively in the life of your child, you begin to show that child that I don't know what you heard about me, but this is who I am. And then that child being able to say, okay, the reality is the way my dad is showing up now, that don't sound like nothing that I've heard in the past. So that person that I heard about in the past, I didn't like. I didn't like because of all those stories. But the person that's showing up now in front of me now, I love this person because this person is not showing me any of those negative things. And so I would say again, meet them where they are. Um, Meet them where they are. Build that relationship, and don't try to tell your side of the story until they're ready.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Thanks for that, Ernest. A lot of times fathers come thinking because they try to reconnect, their daughters or sons should accept as everything is normal. Sometimes they get angry because their children isn't giving them the response they expected. But
Yeah.
if they follow what Ernest just said, maybe, just maybe, the situation or the outcome, the results could be quite different and more favorable. Yeah. How does fatherlessness affect sons differently than daughters? Wow, Gabriella's on a roll here, Ernest.
You know what? So I wrote an ebook. I wrote an ebook called The Core Four, which is the four core values that every daughter should get from her father, right? And so those values are guidance, love and affection, protection, and affirmations. And so I wrote that ebook. Again, I was in the girl dad space and the fatherless daughter space. And of course, of being a girl dad myself, I'm like, okay, these are the values. Number one, I saw my dad, pour into my sisters. These are the values that I, look for. And then these are also the values that I want to pour into my daughter. But one of the things, as I began to, have these different conversations on podcasts and talk about the core four and talk about the book, one of the things I realized was our sons need those same values,
Mm.
right? And so even though when we look at, you got fatherless sons and you got fatherless daughters, they're still fatherless children.
Yeah.
And as children, they still need those same values. They still need those same things. So it may show up a little differently because the as an example to her son, a father may be the example of the man that the son should be. And for the daughter, he's the example of the man uh that she should strive to attract. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
two different outlooks, should I say, but still the same father,
Hmm.
right? And so with those values, again, those four values, guidance, affirmation, love and affection, and protection, our sons need it just as much as our daughters do.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I think that it although it may show up different, at its core, they still need them same values. They still need that love. They still need to feel protected. They still need you to affirm them and tell them, how great they are and the potential that they have and that they're able to do different things. And they definitely need that guidance to say this is right, this is wrong, and this is how you navigate, through life. And so I think that shows up on both sides.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So I'm thinking, okay, so all right, Gabriella, what healing practices can daughters or sons begin even if their father is unwilling or unavailable? Wow, this is a big one.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things that I do, and one of the things that I do, um, I've been blessed the last couple of years to be a part of an organization called the Forgiveness Mission.
Hmm.
And what we do, we have free virtual workshops on forgiveness bi-monthly. So every other month we have a free workshop that we do talking about forgiveness. And one of the things that I want to say is that's where we need to start. You
Yeah.
know, we talked to you. You mentioned about the expectation. When the dad is not getting, you know, his children are not reacting the way he expected them to, but it goes the other way too. The kids may get a version of their father that they didn't expect. Like they
Mhm.
were thinking something else, or they were thinking they was going to receive something else. And so, number one, those unmet expectations on both sides can cause a lot of pain and a lot of hurt. But one of the things we have to do is learn to be able to forgive our fathers, right, for what we expected that they didn't bring and what we didn't expect that they did bring,
Hmm.
right? To be able to say, okay, I can't make this person into something that they're not. And I can't make them live up to the expectations that I want them to live up to. Again, when we start talking about that reconnection, I have to accept them for who they are,
Yeah.
and in that acceptance that's come to some forgiveness. Forgive them for, like I said, who they are or who they may not be. And then
Hmm.
also forgive myself for coming in with the expectations
Yeah.
of who they are, or with the expectations of who I want them to be, and holding them to a standard that they never agreed to.
Yeah.
Because I might be like, okay, I need you to do this. I need you to show up this way. I need you to come to all the birthday parties. I need you to call me once a week. And he
Mhm.
might be like, whoa, whoa, I'm not ready for that. So if
Yeah.
I'm trying to hold him to a standard that he didn't agree to, if I'm trying to hold my kids to a standard that they didn't agree to, so now we'll both have unmet expectations, and now we both disappointed, and now we both losing, losing love for the relationship. But we have to come into the relationship with acceptance and forgiveness, and accept it for where it is now, and say, okay, how can we work on this relationship right where it is to make it into what we want it to be? Because it might not be the relationship that I love, the relationship that I want now. But if I put the work in, if he put the work in, if the children put the work in, and we work on that relationship, we can build it to become the relationship that we want it to be, to find the father-son relationship that we want, the daughter-dad relationship that we want. But it's going to take some activity on both ends. And one of the things that I talked about, I mentioned about the forgiveness
In
workshop.
there, and I hope it
One of the
comes
things
back.
we talk about in the forgiveness workshop is if you have to walk away, because there may be a situation where he doesn't want to change, and
Hmm.
he doesn't want to do his part to build the relationship, to turn the relationship, to make it better, to make it to what you want it to be. And
Yeah,
even in that space, you have to be willing to forgive and release.
yeah,
Forgive him for not being who you wanted him to be. Forgive him for not wanting to be who you wanted him to be. And then you may have to just release it and let it go.
yeah. It's deep. The Gabriel, it's deep, and it's really profound and deep. Yeah, whoa, deep indeed, but so full of love and connectivity, especially for fathers who and children as well. I mean, both parties, both sides have to understand their respective roles that they need to play in that healing process. And as you say, the basic foundation is forgiveness and limiting our expectations so that the reality of what is actually happening in the present is not going to be either disappointing or overwhelming, but rather something that we can see from an objective place and just accept the person for who they are. Wow. On that note, we have to come to the end of this wonderfully amazing, engaging, and inspiring episode entitled Forgive and Release. Yes, Dex, that's absolutely right. Forgive and release. Deal to heal and fulfill with Earnest James. Forgive and release. He put it twice. Church of Christ, Laramie said forgive and release as well. Thank you so much. That's extremely important. So remember, what he was saying is deal with the problem,
Mhm.
heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. All right. So we've come to the end of this episode. And I just want to remind you guys that in whatever you do, continue to do everything you can to break out of depression. Until next time, this is Andy, and on behalf of Gabriella and of course Dexter, we saying thank you so much. Godspeed, God bless. Ernest, just stick around for a couple minutes. I think Dex, our producer, would just want to have a word with you. But for now, until next time, Godspeed. Take care, folks. Bye. We love you.
There ain't got no way, ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord. No, ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord.